A story begins with Wheeljack picking up on an Autobot signal, and he's actually excited about who it is. And he says, "Oh my gosh, it has been so long since I've seen you. How you doing, explosive head?" And this is where we actually go to the other ship. It's not Seaspray this timeline, meaning for once in his, lifetime, other than my boy TF Motion Studios, What a Sea Spray Survived video. Go ahead and check that out. This time it's Warpath. Yeah, actually, pretty interesting. And he actually states he missed Wheeljack for all the rebellious nature or the rebellious things he did in the war. And so, as the two catch up and their ships kind of just go side by side to each other, Warpath actually states he was actually tracking a distress signal. And, well, this is where they actually are met by a Decepticon warship known as the Monstructor. And this is where its captain, Overlord, simply looks down at the two Autobot ships in his view and smiles sadistically, telling his crew to get ready. We would then pan over to his crew, the Stunticons, all of them, Motor Master, Heat Seeker, Slash Mark, Wild Break, and Drag Strip, all getting ready to likely deploy. However, this is where they're immediately blasted. With Wheeljack in Warpath, honestly, just kind of going into it automatically. They're not wasting any time. They know that someone's on this ship in distress, and well, Wheeljack actually buys time for Warpath to create a distraction. However, Warpath distraction isn't really conventional, and even Wheeljack laughs at this, as Warpath actually does sacrifice his own ship to, well, buy them some time. So this does mean he's able to, well, the Decepticon warship is basically able to destroy Warpath's own, well, ship and stuff like that. But Warpath managed to climb to the side and go up. However, this is where Wildbreak actually notices something. A Decepticon ship is moving through space, and it's heading towards Earth. To which Wheeljack simply states, that must be another Decepticon. Seems like its trajectory is going towards Earth. Warpath, we need to hurry up so we can get to Prime and the others. To which Warpath's like, wait, you know where Prime is? All right. Let's hope this signal isn't a bust or something. If it is, then I'll be out immediately. To which Wheeljack is like, all right, just be careful. Can't afford to really lose any more friends here. So if you're gonna do it now. Meanwhile, Wheeljack does have to use evasive maneuvers now, as he's pretty much the only distraction at this point. Kinda wish Warpath blew his ship up in a more vulnerable area, but it is what it is. And well, now we go on to the warship. Warpath is sneaking around. Keep in mind, with only 6 Decepticons on such a big ship, there's obviously some lag in patrols and some areas will be left kinda just unsupervised. So Warpath makes his way to the prison area, and this is where he finds where the distress signal came from, and it's Brawl. He looks in disbelief, but he sees Brawl torn and kind of worn out. Scars and metallic parts kind of busted and just, dents everywhere. And Brawl's like, finally, at least somebody came. And this is where Warpath was like, wait a minute, so that was you? Jeez, dude, what happened to you? And this is where Brawl simply explains, well, when he and his fellow Combaticons fought Jazz and Jetfire, obviously they lost that duo. However, he was found as the only survivor by Overlord. Overlord wanted his skills in exchange for his undying loyalty. And this is where Brawl simply stated he never would have switched up on Megatron. However, Overlord said, fine, you could just be used for entertainment then. And thus tortured Brawl day after day after his, capture. This is the only time he's ever had a break. And this is where he states to Warpath, look, normally I wouldn't change my side for anything, but you get me out of here, you get me away from this monster, and I will gladly join the Autobots. No questions asked. And this is where the two of them escape, but they do round the corner and, well, they run into Motor Master too, which is like, oh, look what we got here. Fresh meat or fresh metal or whatever. So the two of them actually do begin to tag team Motor Master. But keep in mind, due to Brawl's injuries, he's not fully combat ready. But again, he is still strong. Still one of the strongest Decepticons to ever exist. And he does his absolute best against Motor Master. However, Motor Master is able to not only defeat him, but actually gets out his Storm Blade and gets ready to stab him right through his spark. And this is where Warpath simply states, hey, look over here. And this is where Motor Master turns to see Warpath in his tank mode. And he simply says, kablam, and blasts his Motor Master through 3 walls of their ship. And this is where Warpath simply helps him up, or helps up Brawl, excuse me, and asks him, hey, you alright? Jeez, man, you look worse than what you did before. And to which Brawl is like, shut up, let's get out of here. And this is where they both manage to escape, with Brawl taking a little stop into the armory to reclaim his own little Warhammer. And so they regroup with Wheeljack, who loops around the ship after disabling its turrets and stuff like that, and well, picks them up. With Motor Master reconvening in the main room, he simply states that he apologizes that they escaped. However, Overlord isn't even mad. He's actually happy about this, as he actually took a look into the database. And well, Prime has been fighting Megatron on Earth for quite some time. So now he can look forward to actually not only being able to kill Optimus Prime, but Megatron. Then he turns to Heatseeker, who's been piloting the ship, and tells him to set a course for Earth. To which Slashmark is like, alright boss, let's do this. And so their warship actually chases Wheeljack's. This is actually much scarier than I thought. Like, imagine, instead of an aerial dogfight, it's literally a game of sharks and minnows. And so Wheeljack's ship is shot down instead of Dreadwings, meaning the Jackhammer is about to be toast. As they crash land, everything goes the same like in loose cannons, except obviously there's the key differences. Optimus, Bumblebee, and Bulkhead obviously go to, reconvene with Wheeljack and stuff like that. However, it's under the circumstances that Agent Fowler simply states there are Autobots being attacked by Decepticons. And this is where Bumblebee looks in absolute disbelief at what he sees. It's the Stunticons. Like, they haven't seen them in years. They thought they were dead and offline since their, I guess you could say, their last battle. But again, this is where they simply look over and see the Autobots as well, with Heatseeker saying, so this is where Team Prime is. Can't wait to finally scrap ya. And this is where Bulkhead is like, oh great, now we gotta deal with these guys. These guys are rebels, the worst of the worst. They barely even obeyed Megatron. And this is where he turns over to see Wheeljack, Warpath, and Brawl, all pretty much injured and pretty much, battle damage and stuff like that. They barely can stand right now. And this is where Bulkhead eyes Brawl and is like, what's he doing with them? And this is where he does have to run over and check on Wheeljack. But this is where Optimus simply states that he understands Bulkhead's discontent for Brawl due to your history with the Combaticons. But right now, we need to set our differences aside, and considering he's with them, we have a much bigger threat. And so, this is where Heatseeker simply states, hey boss, what's the plan? We gotta take these guys out here and now. To which he's like, yeah, we do, don't we? Well, you know what time it is. Stunticons form up, and this is where they all combine into Menasor, with Optimus simply stating that there will be a change of plans. Get the others out of here while he handles the Combiner. And so we now have Optimus Prime versus Menasor. Menasor tries to use his greater size and strength to his advantage, but it's no use in this one. Oh, no. Optimus is a veteran. He's fought Bruticus before, and has fought other Combiners as well. This is no different. So he uses vehicle mode to outmaneuver him, using Menassor's own weight against him, and even gets a good shot on his head. And this is where Optimus even busts open Menassor's chest with his fist, or at least his sword, I would definitely say. And well, he begins bombarding Menasor with blast after blast after blast, making sure to use every shot possible to aim for his chest. And this is where Brawl is pretty much picked up by Warpath. He's like, Prime really is the best, isn't he? To which he's like, yep, told you. Optimus is one of the best of the best. There's no way that Combiner can take him down. And so this is where he carries him over to the other Autobots, as they're all pretty much just checking on Wheeljack and catching up. He still has his damaged shoulder and probably a few more bruises or burns on him. But this is where, as Warpath comes over with Brawl, RC points her blaster directly at the former Decepticon and simply states, give her one reason not to blow a hole in his spark. And to which Warpath simply states, look, I understand how this looks, and I understand that this may not be how it seems. Or, it might be a little Decepticon trick, but Warpath is with us. To which RC thinks, I trust you, but you think I'm going to trust one of the strongest and most dangerous members of the Combaticons? To which Brawl's like, okay, look, I know I ripped a lot of Autobots in half. But look, I'm on your side here. And this is where Wheeljack simply places a hand on RC's shoulder and simply states, he's right. Dude's been tortured on that ship. And, well, his captor's not really one to play nice with others. To which RC is like, wait, his captor? You mean these Stunticons? Yeah, they're working for one of the worst Decepticons of all time. And right now, Prime needs to finish this quickly. Speaking of which, Optimus Prime now has Menasor on the ropes and actually blasts him to the point where he simply deconstructs and, decombines and everything. And this is where Optimus simply walks over and gets ready to finish off the Stunticons. As again, Optimus isn't really taking the risk of having the Decepticons having a combiner on the team. However, this comes a little bit too late, as Brawl tells him to look out behind him. And this is where Optimus is blasted right through his back by Overlord. However, not enough to really kill him. It's more like an Age of Extinction thing where he basically gets blasted in the back, but instead he's sent tumbling forward and face plants onto the ground. To which Overlord simply like, yeah, this ought to be fun. I get to terminate every Autobot right here, right now, doing something Megatron could never hope to do. Now, come here and show Daddy a good time. To which Warpath and Brawl both get their respective weapons, and even though they are injured, they're able to at least land some hits before Overlord just completely stumps him out. Next off, he charges towards Team Prime, not even giving them a real chance to come to him. He comes for them. And well, they try their best, but this is what happens in the exact order. Considering Overlord is still one of the tougher and heavily armored Decepticons, they have a tough time. So this is what he does. He grabs RC by the waist and crushes her midsection. Still alive, but obviously that's a lot of damage. Then there's Bulkhead, who uses his wrecking ball to smack Overlord off of her, pretty much saving RC just in time. However, Overlord is simply petty, actually utilizing his own rifle to backhand Bulkhead so hard he goes flying into the gas station and is knocked unconscious. Then there's Bumblebee, who actually is able to pull off some small maneuvers on Overlord. However, when he tries to jump backwards, Overlord grabs him by his leg and then holds him by his waist and tears the leg of Bumblebee clean off here. And he's about to step on him like a bug until Wheeljack's shoulder charges him back. And again, you might say, why am I having, this happen to the Autobots? And again, this is because Overlord is no joke. He is completely not Megatron. Megatron fights with skill, honor, and sometimes a little bit of deception. However, Overlord is completely different. He doesn't care about any of that. He doesn't care about the rules. He doesn't care about the simple war. He simply cares about killing, and that's it. But as I talk about this, he beats the crap out of Wheeljack, only for him to get shot in the back by Optimus. He's recovered, and it actually shows that he just, kind of has a hole blown through the upper right of his chest and through a window. So Optimus decides to basically pull a G1, pull an IDW, and hits that man with a haymaker, sending him flying and crashing him into the ground. However, that's not where it ends for him. Ratchet, having seen everyone's life signals on critical, rushes over and he has a device in his hand. And he tells Optimus to step back. Optimus sees this and immediately jumps away as Ratchet blasts the immobilizer, utilizing it to not only freeze Overlord in place, but this buys him enough time to get everyone out of there, Brawl included. And pretty much this it makes everything simpler. It makes everything easier for the Autobots to get away at this point. But it does leave Overlord there. But this is where we're going to end off with being back at the Autobot base, and Ratchet is able to successfully repair Wheeljack, Bulkhead, Optimus, Brawl, and Warpath, with RC and Boneby needing a lot more considering the damage that they took. And this is where Optimus simply states to Brawl that he appreciates that he decided to join the right side, to which Brawl ultimately does swear his allegiance to the Autobot cause like he promised. And Optimus can tell that he is being genuine. However, this is where he states now that their numbers are kind of at a diminished rate here, or a diminished level, they are going to have to work to the best of their abilities, and tells him he will be going after a relic himself. And that's where we're going to leave it off here. What happened to Dreadwing? Where is Overlord and the Stunticons going to be going after this? And can the Autobots pull through with most of their members injured and only 5? Well, I mean, technically they got heavy hitters anyway. But hey, that's going to be all for today, you guys. Be sure to comment down below, like and subscribe, and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope you guys get ready for part 2. And well, yeah, peace.